You procrastinate not because you're lazy. You procrastinate because you think you're smart enough to anticipate every unexpected event. Thinking hard seems productive, but it rarely leads to completion. You have to plan every last detail, research until you arrive at the perfect answer, think through every possible scenario, and somehow the task never leaves the notebook. This is intellectual procrastination. Thinking replaces action, not because you're lazy, but because your brain rewards preparation more than the painstaking work of execution. Stay tuned, and we'll show you one quick trick and two small habits that turn thinking into action. No rocket science, just something you can try in the next 10 minutes. If you want less mental drudgery and more real progress, keep watching. Your future self will thank you and probably give you a pat on the back. 1. The difference from regular procrastination. Thinking can masquerade as doing. Intellectual procrastination is the habit of replacing action with more thinking, planning, or researching, while regular procrastination more often shows up as clear distractions like scrolling social media, tidying the kitchen, or watching TV. In plain terms, one feels busy in the mind, the other feels busy outside of it. Both delay the real work, but they look very different on the surface. One big difference is the type of activity used to avoid the task. With intellectual procrastination, first do extra reading, endless outlining, or revise plans until they are impossible to start. With regular procrastination, first do laundry, answer emails that don't matter, or doom scroll instead. The first creates a trail of useful work that doesn't produce the main result. The second produces little of value at all. Think of it as collecting building supplies forever instead of actually building a house. Emotional tone also separates them. Intellectual procrastination often feels safe and even virtuous. Research, analysis, and planning are socially approved, so it's easy to fool yourself. Regular procrastination more often brings quick guilt or boredom and is easier to spot. The result: first you feel like first VE advance something when first haven't, and that keeps me trapped longer. It's a clever disguise. Detecting the difference is practical. Look at outputs versus inputs. If you spend hours gathering facts and have no finished draft, prototype, or decision, you're likely doing intellectual procrastination. Examples include: first do 10 versions of a to-do list before starting one task. First do seminars and guides instead of trying the method on my own project. First do scenario planning until options multiply and none gets chosen. Short bursts of thinking followed by action are normal. Long campaigns of thought without output are informative. Consequences differ too. Regular procrastination often costs immediate time and leaves a messy to-do list. Intellectual procrastination eats momentum and delays learning, because actual doing produces feedback and improvement, while thinking alone rarely does. So the difference matters. One steals time, the other steals practice. A little humor helps here. It's the academic cousin of binge-watching baking shows instead of burning the first loaf yourself. 2. Why it's socially accepted. Many institutions reward the idea over the act. Meetings celebrate clever plans, committees produce reports, and CVs list degrees and publications more prominently than messy, unfinished projects. This creates a visible reward system where thinking gets applause. In a company, first draft detailed strategy slides, and people praise my insight, so first do more planning instead of shipping features. In a classroom, first write careful essays and get top marks for analysis, so first do more reading and less hands-on experimentation. Social norms prefer low-risk displays. Talking through scenarios feels safe because it keeps consequences distant. Short sentence: first rehearse every possible objection in my head and present a well-polished argument, and my peers call it thoroughness. That's social approval. Nodding heads, polite emails, invitations to speak. Looks a lot like success even when the actual work is delayed. Cultural ideas about intelligence feed the pattern. We celebrate thoughtful people and thinkers get status. Invited to panels, tagged as experts, quoted in threads. This makes it natural to hide behind intellect. First, collect articles, bookmark long reads, and comment with nuance, so others think first I'm serious about the issue. Meanwhile, the quieter, dirtier tasks of doing the work, trial and error, failed attempts, messy prototypes, get less social cachet. Practical structures reinforce it too. Performance metrics and social media measure signals that are easy to display. Length of a proposal, number of tweets, depth of analysis. Short sentence. First can email a 15-slide plan and look busy for a week. Also, delaying action by thinking buys time to refine identity. Procrastination becomes a reputation strategy rather than just avoidance. Gentle humor helps. Thinking wears a suit and tie. Doing prefers sweatpants and glue on its hands, and society often hands the suit the microphone. 3. The mind as a shield. People often use thinking as a way to avoid doing. It feels safe and tidy, like putting on armor before stepping into a battle you could postpone. That armor is work. Long lists, endless research, perfecting plans. It looks productive on the outside, but it frequently protects from the uncomfortable parts of action, risking failure, showing imperfect work, or simply facing boredom. For example, someone preparing a talk may spend days tweaking slides and reading articles instead of rehearsing a single sentence out loud. This protective pattern shows up in predictable ways. Analysis paralysis is one. Too many options or details make a person freeze, and the brain prefers spinning scenarios over taking messy steps. Perfection-driven polishing is another. First, you spend extra time adjusting margins and fonts to avoid the anxiety of sharing a draft. Thinking tasks also create the illusion of progress. Researching 3 books and making a 10-point plan feels like getting ready, even when the real work would be to write the first paragraph or call one potential collaborator. You can catch the shield in action by watching what happens right before deadlines. Frequently, people move from concrete tasks to hypothetical ones, imagining conversations, rehearsing all possible objections, or compiling more background until they feel ready. First, do notice it when my to-do list fills with planning tasks while the core task stays untouched. Emotional signs appear too. A nagging nervousness that gets soothed by more thinking, a sudden urge to reorganize files, or a tidy, intellectual activity that keeps hands busy but files unopened. Breaking through that shield means shifting from thinking as avoidance to thinking as preparation. Small, specific actions work best. Commit to 5 minutes of doing and then stop if needed. Send a short, imperfect email instead of crafting the perfect campaign pitch. Make a 1-slide mock-up rather than a 50-page plan. Time boxing helps. Give yourself fixed slots for thinking and separate slots for doing, because the mind that strategizes can be trusted less when it chooses the comfortable option. Bring in real-world feedback quickly. Show a prototype to one person. Ask a colleague to watch the first 5 minutes of your practice, or record a rough version and listen back. Finally, reframe thought as a tool, not a blanket. Set clear, testable mini-goals so thinking answers a question. What assumption do first need to check, rather than avoiding the whole problem? Habit tricks like pairing the first tiny action with something you already do. Make one sentence of your draft right after morning coffee. Make the shield less useful. With practice, thinking becomes a measured step before action, not a shiny suit of mental armor that keeps work at arm's length. 4. How it disguises it. Thinking hard often produces visible signs of progress. Pages of notes, color-coded outlines, and carefully curated bookmarks, so the brain's work looks like real work. These artifacts give me something to show, which helps me explain why nothing concrete got finished. A thick folder, a detailed spreadsheet, or a slide deck full of bullet points can sit for weeks and still be waved around as evidence that first I'm on it. That appearance of preparation masks the absence of the single thing that proves progress, action that moves a task toward completion. First, do extra research when a decision feels risky. First, do another draft instead of sending the first one. First, do meetings to discuss meetings. Those are classic moves. For example, a writer stacks dozens of articles and promises a synthesis, but keeps adding sources. A software engineer refactors code repeatedly repeatedly without shipping a feature. An entrepreneur meets more advisors and compiles more market reports while the product doesn't leave the garage. Each behavior looks diligent. Each keeps the person safely in the realm of thinking rather than doing. Look for telltale patterns. If first have many versions of a document with only cosmetic edits, if my calendar is full of exploratory calls but empty of deadlines, or if my to-do list keeps spawning new sublists instead of check boxes, first am probably disguising procrastination. Specific phrases often reveal the roots. First just need one more study. First am still clarifying the problem, or first will finalize it after another review. A digital trail can expose this too. Countless open tabs, annotated PDFs unsummarized, and draft files labeled final_final2 are the fingerprints of thinking that replaces action. Because thinking feels safe and low risk, it gets dressed up as productivity. First defend it by claiming caution or thoroughness, and others accept that narrative because it's plausible. A little humor helps. Polishing can become perpetual, like cleaning the kitchen instead of ordering food. Not blaming anyone, just naming the pattern. When first do visible but non-consequential work, first can convince myself first VE advanced, even though what really matters is the next concrete step first haven't taken yet. 5. What it destroys. Intellectual procrastination steadily eats away at momentum and makes real progress unlikely. It replaces doing with thinking, and when first do too much thinking first stall the whole machine. Projects sit in draft form, decisions are filed under maybe, and the task list grows like an overwatered plant. That slow rot is quiet but real. A plan never tested stays a plan, not a result. First do endless revisions to a proposal while the opportunity window closes. For example, a colleague polished a pitch deck for months and missed an investor deadline. The investor moved on because they needed someone who could act, not someone who could perfect slide transitions. In teams, slow decisions force others to idle. Team members stop waiting with bated breath and start making backup plans or leaving. Trust erodes without drama. People simply learn not to rely on it. First do intellectual work instead of practical learning, and that destroys skill growth. Practice teaches faster than pondering. A programmer who tweaks architecture forever misses the lessons learned by shipping a minimum viable product and fixing issues in the wild. A writer who rewrites the first chapter endlessly never gets the feedback that shapes the middle and the end. Action creates feedback loops. Thinking alone produces drafts that look impressive in my head, but barely survive contact with reality. First, do not just waste time. First, waste energy and increase stress. Constantly looping through options wears mental stamina down and fills the mind with what-ifs. Simple choices become Herculean. Decision fatigue accumulates, and first find myself avoiding decisions later in the day altogether. The result is rushed choices, missed nuances, and occasional embarrassment when hurried judgment replaces considered action. First do erode my credibility when hesitation becomes habitual. Colleagues, clients, and friends notice patterns. Promises gain a weightless feel. If first delay starting a joint project, partners move resources elsewhere, and future proposals are greeted with polite skepticism. Income can slip. Freelancers who research endlessly find fewer contracts than those who submit 80% finished work, iterate, and improve. First, do kill learning opportunities by postponing experiments. An entrepreneur who endlessly analyzes markets rather than testing a basic product loses the chance to pivot based on customer reactions. Students who read every source before writing miss the clarifying power of drafting. Mistakes provide data. Without them, first am blindfolded and stumbling. First do damage my confidence, too. Each uncompleted plan becomes a little dead. Success needs a string of actions, not a library of notes. Over time, first notice self-talk shifting from first can try to first never finish, unless first interrupt the pattern. A tiny step, sending a single email, publishing one page, launching a simple anno domini. rebuilds that arc far quicker than another hour of abstract polishing. Finally, first do hamper creativity. Ideas need constraint and pressure to find form. Endless rumination creates neat little conceptual castles that collapse when asked to produce. Creative work thrives under deadlines and tests. Thinking only turns potential into static museum pieces. A single decision, awkward and imperfect, often leads to breakthroughs that a lifetime of thought never will. Brief summary. Intellectual procrastination is when thinking replaces action, planning, research, and refining in a cycle so that real work never begins. It manifests as endless notes, perfect plans that never materialize, and the silent hope that one more read will clarify everything. Why this happens? We crave certainty, fear mistakes, and thinking feels safe and free. But the price is time, missed feedback, and projects that remain just ideas. Change your mind first. Put it off first, studying another article, polishing another slide, waiting for the right moment. You can do the same, and this isn't a moral failing, it's a habit we can change. Small changes work. Choose the smallest version of a task, set a short timer, make one imperfect thing public, and get quick feedback. Limit your thinking. Force yourself to write a first draft, and combine planning with a small experiment. Thinking plus action is better than thinking alone. If this helped you, try this 10-minute experiment right now. Choose one small next step, set a timer, and take it. Leave a short comment about what happened. Both successes and failures are welcome. If you want more, subscribe for practical follow-ups. In the next videos, I'll talk about risk-free thinking, where thinking is your friend and action becomes reality.